In this video, I'm going to be taking a look at activity 214 called Document the Assembly in the IED curriculum. So in this activity, we're going to be taking the construction blocks that we've modeled in the past. We're going to be assembling them and then creating an exploded view and an assembly drawing as noted from the activity. So first off, I'm going to show you a bottom-up modeling approach. So I've modeled all these parts. This is a good example of bottom-up modeling, to where I have an arch, I have the tall block, I have the wedge, and they're all in separate design files. All separate parts have their own file. To start this out, I've got an untitled design file here. And and usually whenever you go to do a bottom-up modeling approach, Fusion really wants you to save that file before you start modeling it. So I'm going to end up putting this into, I'm going to call this construction block assembly. And for more traditional CAD users, this will be kind of very similar to having an assembly file, even though it's just another design file that we have here. But it'll be kind of a similar approach that you're kind of used to. So if you've used SolidWorks, Inventor, or anything like that, this is going to be a lot more familiar. The selfie stick in Activity 213 is going to be one that has a top-down modeling approach. So in order to start this, I'm going to right-click on the arch and I'm going to say Insert into Current Design. It's going to take a second to load this, and it's going to place this object at the origin of this new design file that we have. Before we start adding, and here's how you can tell that you're using a bottom-up assembly approach, is that in this file, I'm going to go ahead and say OK, is now we've placed a file inside of a file. We have a link icon, so that means this file is kind of copied, and it's also dependent upon the file that I have highlighted here. So I'm going to ground this component. Now if you right click on this and say ground, it is not going to ground the component. So here's my graphics updating. So you can see I can still move this part around. So it's not grounded. Unfortunately, that's just one part, so it's because it's the file within inside the file. So the actual component of the arch is not what we just grounded. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to revert the position, so that way it goes back to the original position. I can go ahead and take off this. I can unground that, so that way that's not there. I'm going to expand, and I'm going to find the arch component here. And this is what we're going to ground by right-clicking and choosing ground. And now if I click and drag on the part, it will not move. So little note anytime you bring in those particular items. Okay, I'm going to bring in the tall block. You can use the move commands. So the move copy command automatically runs. I'm going to place it in the relative place that I'm going to assemble it in. And I always recommend when you do an assembly, you do that relative position and in the right orientation in which you're going to assemble it. And now I'm going to bring in the wedge. Same manner, right clicking, inserting into current design, and getting this moved into place. And I'm going to go ahead and say OK. So now I can close the data panel. Here's our three files we're going to assemble. We're going to use joint, and I'm going to rotate here so that way we can see, and I want to see the underneath side of the wedge. So I'm going to start with the wedge component. I'm going to choose joint, and under the motion here I have the little shortcut menu to change the motion without having to move to the tab. So I make sure rigid is selected. I'm going to zoom in. The way the wedge is on the image for the activity is that the wedge is going to sit right here up to this corner, and I'm looking for a joint that would go through a corresponding position. So here's the face that is being highlighted, and here is the joint that I'm going to lock into place. I'm going to go ahead and click. When I see that, the chip for the joint is going to be identified. I'm going to rotate so I can see the top of the arch, and on the arch top I'm going to choose that corresponding corner, and that is going to go through and cause the block to be assembled in that manner. And I'm going to say OK to accept the joint. Okay, if I click and drag on the part, that's always a test of did I actually get and eliminate the degrees of freedom, and then there's no movement. So if I use the move command, we will get movement, but if I just click and drag, hold down on my left mouse button and try to move, it's not going to move for us. So I'm going to go ahead and run joint again, And I'm going to do the same kind of manner with the tall block. This one's going to be a pretty easy assembly. I'm going to find this corner in the upper corner there, and I'm going to find it. Now, Fusion does not have an origin, a joint origin to where I'm wanting to put it. I want to put it right here, but here's the thing about Fusion, it is automatically going to pick up intersections for our part. So when I click on that corner, it's going to move it into place, and I can go ahead and say OK, and there we have our assembly for our construction blocks, just like what is in the activity. And we're going to be using this to create an exploded view. So we're going to be changing workspaces in our next video, moving to an animation. And then finally, we're going to be moving to an assembly drawing of this part, just like how it's shown on the activity document.